So we're back with Attorney Boc Labastilla. So we've already started talking about some of the gaps that you've seen with policies. Can you talk about the larger gaps that you see at the city and barangay level?
Well, yeah. You see, the biggest gap there's that memorandum again I mentioned from DDB, and the DILG also has that memorandum. It keeps telling the barangays to, and even the law has that, RA 9165, to allocate a substantial portion of the annual budget to
Fund.
Yeah, to fund the drug, but it's not very clear what in particular they want to fund. Like for instance, the DDB, in that memo it tells that for every surrenderer, you're supposed to have a video recording of the surrender process, etc. Right? So, I mean, right away you should have thought that all barangays should bought, video cams.
Right.
But it's not. We go to the budget office. That's not an allowed expense, right? Because there's nothing in the law that even recognizes community-based rehab program, or even recognizes levels of addiction, right? They're either in jail or you're in the residential facility. So there's that. The law has to catch up to the reality. There's a huge number of people out there who belong to the outpatient treatment program. It's like 9 out of 10, right? And maybe half of this, 90% do not even need treatment, right? So you need budget for that. You need budget for training these people, the screeners. You need budget to enable your doctors to attend to them. But there's nothing again in the law that allows for that kind of an expense. So the barangays have that problem, how to liquidate their expense. If they want to donate food, for instance, or they want to spend for the lunch of their of the people rehabbing in their barangays that are in our program. So they find it very hard to justify the expense. So until the law recognizes that there are levels of addiction, and there should be a huge allowance now for or budget even for community-based programs, then there will always be that tug of war between accounting and the budget office and programs like what we have in Caloocan.
Okay. So where would this, I guess, memo or order have to come from? I mean, ideally it would come from the top, but
yes,
DDB or PDEA?
No, they're just following. They're tied up. So every time you prepare a budget, you always have to have a legal basis for that. You have to tie it up, unless you can find something there. What we do until now, these are all lumped in training expense.
Okay.
Yeah, even the rehab expense are in training expense.
Okay.
However, they're not our people. How are you going to justify training them? Right? They're not even employees. So there's a lot of gray area there, and until that's resolved, I think the fastest way to resolve that would be just to amend Section 15 of RA 9165.
Okay.
Just put in a small line there that says that not all users belong in jail, or right, that using could be either residential, or if they're occasional users like you, so they can be in the community-based rehab. Just that simple additional community-based rehab program, it will just open the floodgates for all these budget processes.
Okay. And you kind of already mentioned this, but as of now, there is no legal standing for the legitimacy of community-based programs.
Yes.
In any documentation from any government office.
Even that's why they find it so hard to come up with papers on this one. Even the memo of the regional business, the RPOC memo, mentions several laws, right? But there's nothing in those laws that even mention, community-based care program. There's that huge gap, which has to be addressed already. I mean, if everybody's talking community-based, just put it in there. We don't have to amend the entire law. Just Section 15, CBRP. That's it.
Okay, so that's I guess that's the first big step that we would need to address.
Yes.
Or bring to policymakers.
Right.
Okay. In terms of things that the CBDR already gets to do or operate in, what are some gaps or implementation issues that you see already?
Okay. You mean the one that we're doing now?
In Caloocan, sure, yes.
Okay. Now again, I hate to belabor that point.
No, that's...
The church has to... It's the one with the... It's not with under COA, for sure. So, it has flexibility on these things. And even like in our program, we have there a field trip. Right? We're supposed to field trip before graduation. And there's just a small expense there for transport and food and to a point na I thought it was already like, okay, it's done, it's here in the program, we can, then last minute said, we can even justify it as an expense. So you have to, so you go to the barangays and you go to the church, asking them how to, if they can, fork up in advance that money. But these things, it all boils down to what ideally should be the setup between the civil society, which includes the church, and government in this case, because the government's case is its hands are tied. Right? So the church has to come up big, in support of this one. Eventually, and it's getting to the point, and I'm talking to some priests, we have to find a way out. We can't keep doing this forever. Right? We have to pass the baby.
So the church wants to pass the baby eventually.
Well, yeah, I talked with one priest. He's one of the pioneers in this program. So yes, this is not its core, although it's brought onto them now, right? So it's a problem that government created, but I suppose that problem needed to be addressed sooner or later. Now it's being addressed, but government is not even recognizing that there's this gap, right? You talk to any leaders in Congress or even Malacanang, and DOH, Secretary Bial just got rejected for the final time. She has not. I don't think she was able to carry this message across to her bosses that there are levels of addiction. So until that's done, there will always be the huge burden for this program will always be outside the government.
Okay.
Right. What we're just lucky in Caloocan because Mayor Oka decided right away you have to do this the right way. It's a health problem, it's a health issue. You have to let professionals address the issue. Your doctors have to be in there. You need to hire psychologists, maybe even a psychiatrist, which we did. And you need to educate all your volunteers in the science behind the treatment. Right.
So you just mentioned the word that it's a health issue,
right?
And maybe we should be thinking about this in terms of a health framework. Can you talk about the current reality and maybe how people or how the government is viewing drug abuse?
Well, yes. I think there's a large curtain until all the killings happen. Everyone just sort of took on a us versus them approach. Them being the addicts, the users, they're not us, right? Maybe up to a certain point that was the case, but this was the first time that the word addict really took on a crossover. It's like, okay, everyone is an addict. What if everyone is an addict? How do we approach the problem? Right? So now if you address it that way, like everyone can get colds or headache, right? That will change your viewpoint, how you look at addiction in the first place, because not everyone is a criminal, right? But everyone has a health issue, right? So the moment you put it that way, then everyone becomes involved in how to solve the problem. There's no more us versus them.
I see. Yes.
Right. So it's like sooner or later it will get to you, to your wife, to your son, your parents. So we might as well address it now, because until all these killings happened, it never really was that urgent a problem that needed that urgent a solution. Until now, not everyone in government will admit that it's a health issue.
Okay.
Right. That's the sad part of the thing. They still think that, especially the most leaderships in the PNP, for instance, they still think it's a criminal issue. But and then they look at other countries, right? Why is, for instance, the U.S. not treating it as a health issue seriously? Why is it so? Why is trillions of dollars still being spent in police? Maybe the U.S. is a bad example. See, so that's the give and take of the whole situation. So for me, there's no ifs and buts about it. There's no debate that it's a health issue. We have to address it that way. DOH should be taking the lead in this one. Fortunately, for the longest time since President Duterte became president, DOH has been leaderless. Right? Everyone knew that the secretary was going to be rejected after all. So, there's very, very few people there. They should have treated this as an epidemic. Got some maybe experts from which countries are maybe in the forefront in this treatment. Like if Netherlands has found the solution, maybe bring someone from Netherlands in, or Portugal in. Talk about. Let's not maybe because let's not listen to Carl Hart, for instance, because he's from the U.S. and bring. Sure, there must be some guys out there, some doctors who can shed light on whether we're doing the right thing or we're not doing the right thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's all we have for today. I'd like to thank Attorney Bob Levistoya again for all of his insight and inputs.